Hello and welcome to Legal Talk, a program brought to you by the law firm of O'Donnell, Weiss & Mattei, PC. We are a full-service law firm with offices in Phoenixville and in Pottstown. Please join us on the web at owmlaw.com. Today we have a program that's a particular pleasure to me, being an attorney who does a lot of Social Security disability work. We have with us the director of the Pennsylvania Bureau of Disability Determination, Steve Rollins. Welcome, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, David.
And Steve is going to work with us to explain some of the ins and outs of what the Bureau of Disability Determination does. He's a very accomplished person.
Thank you.
Steve, could you give us just a little bit of background so that people know who they're listening to?
Sure, thank you, David. Before doing what I'm doing now, I had worked for the Office of General Counsel for the Social Security Administration, representing them in federal courts. And from that, then I went into the private arena representing claimants. So for the last 25 years, I've basically done Social Security disability litigation in one form or another, and joined the Commonwealth BDD last year.
Okay, over the years, I've gotten to know you, not really personally, but because you've been a lecturer at the Pennsylvania Bar Institute programs,
Yes.
Which is reserved for the best of the best who can teach the practitioners how to better do their job. And so you have been there, and thank you for that.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Well, now you've taken on a new responsibility, and you're the director of the Bureau of Disability Determination. What is the Bureau?
Okay, well, we are a Commonwealth agency. We're within the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. We're a bureau within that department. What we do is adjudicate cases for the Social Security Administration, which is a federal agency. So when somebody files for disability through Social Security, at the initial level, Social Security will send the case to my agency, and we have adjudicators that determine, and medical staff that determines whether or not someone meets the requirements for disability. And then once we make a decision, the case goes back to Social Security for effectuation.
Okay, so you practice, you said 25 years in the private side, doing what I do.
But 20 probably combined. I was with Social Security 4 to 5 years, and then a little over 20 years in the private side.
Okay,
so, yeah.
So this is a major transition.
Yes, I mean, I did have the government experience before with SSA, but certainly this is the first time doing it for the Commonwealth, and also it had been a long time since I was with Social Security.
Okay. I think people should understand what the procedural steps are. When someone comes in to me, or even on their own, and wants to apply for disability, SSDI, the Social Security Disability Insurance, or the SSI, Supplemental Security Income, they can do so online or go into the Social Security office, and that's called a field office for Social Security, SSA, Social Security Administration.
Correct.
And what does a field office, what's their job in preparing it to go to you?
Yeah, basically they interact with the claimant and representative if the claimant has one. They obtain the information about the claimant's medical conditions, any treatment they have, perhaps their past work, whether they're currently working. As you know, a person can work and still qualify for disability if their work is not above the substantial gainful activity level. And they prepare the file, and then will sometimes send out medical requests to some of the larger facilities. They have a process, and then ship the case over to my agency, who receives it, and then we take care of adjudicating from that point.
So you are a state agency, though?
Correct.
Under contract with the Social Security Administration?
Correct.
All right.
So we get to serve two lords.
All right. And is this the way it works throughout the country, all the states generally?
Yes. Social Security will contract with each state to adjudicate the initial level claims. And we also do continuing disability reviews as well that Social Security will send over for us in cases where people are already receiving benefits.
Okay, so there's the basic level of filing, making sure that everything is together, and then the package is sent to you.
Correct.
And it's your agency that actually makes the determination as to whether a person is disabled or not.
That's correct. We further developed the case, requesting whatever medical evidence is needed for the file. We will interact with the claimant to identify additional sources of treatment, possibly clarify work activity, prior work activity, and then when the case is fully developed, we have our medical staff will make a determination as to whether or not the claimant meets the requirements, and then send the case back to SSA.
Okay. So now I know most of the claimants that I work with have their cases sent to Wilkes-Barre.
Okay.
Some to Harrisburg. And there are how many? And there's a third office, I believe.
Correct. The way we're structured, we have a state office, what we call state office in Harrisburg, where I work out of, and that's our administrative office. But then we have 3 branch offices that actually adjudicate the claims. As you said, Wilkes-Barre and Harrisburg are 2. Greensburg, outside of Pittsburgh, is our 3rd.
Okay. And so what determines where my client's case is going to go?
Basically, field offices are assigned to one of the branch offices. So we have so many field offices in counties that go to Wilkes-Barre, so many to Harrisburg, so many to Greensburg. We try to balance it out around the state so one branch doesn't necessarily get overwhelmed. The reality is sometimes one branch has more work than others, and we will shift work around to help adjudicate the claim so we're not waiting too long.
So in our area, we were talking about people basically in Berks, Montgomery, Chester counties, but also somewhat in Lehigh and a few others. And you're talking about field offices for Social Security in Limerick, Pennsylvania, and Reading and Westchester, Allentown. Are they all Wilkes-Barre offices? Do you know, or is
most? Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I know off the top of my head every field office's assignment, but I know they tend to be in clusters, so most likely they're going to Wilkes-Barre. I think more of the southern areas in the Philadelphia area can kind of be split actually because of the volume. But I think with the offices you're pointing to, I think go to Wilkes-Barre, but I don't know if I should say quote me on that.
I didn't. I shouldn't ask you something.
It's okay.
Okay. Okay. So it gets forwarded to your office, and there's a list of doctors and hospitals and other treating facilities that have cared for the particular claimant. Where does that go to? Who handles that?
Well, when the case comes in, the first assignment is to what we would call an adjudicator, some refer to as an examiner. But basically, the adjudicator is the individual who will make the first day call to the claimant and introduce themselves, explain the process to them a bit. I'm going to
interrupt you here and ask you this. So, if there's an attorney who's representing that claimant, do they still call that claimant directly?
Well, it depends. If the attorney's appearance is noted in the record, then and the attorney has not given us the authority to contact the claimant directly, then the adjudicators are generally going to call the attorney.
So the adjudicator will call the attorney and probably ask the attorney, "Is it okay if we talk with your client?"
Correct. We do it that way. Again, when I was in private practice, we used to do 3-way calls at times, so we could continue to represent and help the claimant when the adjudicator called.
Okay. And they also, the adjudicators, examiners, also usually send out certain requests to the claimant. And what can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. There are standard forms that the adjudicator will send out when the adjudicator receives the case, there should be a disability report already in the file that SSA obtained that does have some general information. But the forms we send out are generally more specific. We, in particular, send out an activities of daily living form that is a multi-page form that asks the claimant about his or her activities and functional abilities and limitations. And that, again, that can be 5, 6, 7 pages.
People don't understand why they get that sometimes.
Okay.
And they groan because it's long.
Understood.
It takes some extra time to fill out. But
it really does, but they are very important.
Yes.
Because it's not only the existence of a medical condition that establishes disability, it's how that impairment functionally limits that person.
So that's very important.
So very much so. Somebody with a herniated disc may have activities that are limited to the point that they cannot work, and another person with the same herniated disc may not be limited at all.
Yes.
And so these activities help the adjudicator and then the medical staff ultimately determine how the impairments functionally impact that person. So we'll send out the activities form. We'll often send out the work background form, which will ask for more detailed information about the work background. Yes, there is work background information on the initial disability report, but the work background report we send out is more detailed and obtains more information about the exertional and non-exertional demands of past work.
So everyone who's filing should recognize that even though they've done a good job, maybe worked with the attorney in getting things filed, and they've put in as much information as they can, they're going to get the ADL form, and they're also going to get the work history form, no matter what.
Generally, yes. I'm not aware of a situation where we wouldn't send that out.
Okay. All right.
Maybe, perhaps I should stand or jump back, and we may address this later, but the compassionate allowance cases may skip that in some cases, yeah.
All right. And they also send out forms, I believe, to sometimes family members or people who are closely associated with.
Yes, if an individual on their disability report has identified what we call an other interested party, an OIP, then the adjudicator may send out an daily activities form to that individual to get insight about the claimant's functioning from that individual.
So you better make sure that person takes it seriously too.
One would hope, yes.
Okay.
And would say nice things about the claimant.
Right, or not so nice things about their physical condition.
Yes.
And then the adjudicator also has this long list, as I said, of doctors and hospitals and all. And so, what do they do in relationship to those places?
There are standard requests that they will then send out, either electronically, fax, or sometimes having to mail it to smaller offices. So they'll send out requests asking for medical records that will cover the relevant period that they're adjudicating, and wait for those records to come in. If they don't come in within a reasonable period of time, they will recontact the doctor's offices. Sometimes they will call, or other medical facilities. Sometimes they will call, sometimes they'll send out another letter. And so they do try to make what we can call reasonable effort to ensure they get the evidence that exists.
I sometimes receive telephone calls from one of the adjudicators saying, we're not getting a response from this particular hospital or doctor, and obviously they think it's important that they get it. Not only was it listed, but it looks like something that should be important.
Correct.
Okay. So they'll actually reach out and contact the attorney, or in some cases the claimant.
The claimant himself, yes.
All right. And that is with the idea that we, the lawyer, the claimant, can sit on somebody's doorstep and say, will you get this done? And so
yeah,
and it works.
Well, our experience, and also when I was in private practice, sometimes claimants, when they would go into the doctor's office, had a little more say,
yes,
maybe a little more pull in being able to get the doctor to respond to requests. You know, we're not ignorant to the fact that facilities receive numerous medical requests, and certainly ours is just another one, but if we can get that somehow fulfilled, it does allow the adjudicator to see the case more fully.
Okay. We're going to take a brief break to hear from our good sponsors, and we'll be right back so you can understand a little bit more about what the Bureau of Disability Determination does and how it does it.
There are many reasons people join AAA and renew their membership year after year. In addition to the peace of mind of emergency roadside service, AAA membership includes expert travel planning, exclusive discounts, and more. AAA members also get exclusive Show Your Card and Save discounts at participating retail merchants and can save money on theme park tickets, luggage, and travel accessories at the East Penn Travel Store. Join today and start taking advantage of all AAA East Penn has to offer. And visit us on the web at www.aaa.com.
Welcome back to Legal Talk, brought to you by the law firm of O'Donnell, Weiss & Mattei, PC. We are having the pleasure of talking with Steve Rollins, who is the director of the Pennsylvania Bureau of Disability Benefits or Determination. And my fault again on this. I'm not used to all these initials, Steve.
We say DDD for short.
and it's interesting. We were discussing in the break that a lot of people receive letters from L&I, Labor and Industry, Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. That's not you, but it is you. And explain that if you would.
Well, and importantly, it's not Social Security.
That's right.
People go into a Social Security office or file online for Social Security benefits and then receive information from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's Department of Labor and Industry and Bureau of Disability Determination Services. So they can get confused. But the way it works is Social Security contracts with each state to a parent agency to have a bureau make the initial determinations. And we are the agency within Pennsylvania that does that.
So they can expect that they're going to receive some correspondence from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and it's working for Social Security.
Basically, yeah, working upon, they refer the cases to us, so we're basically their agents to do it.
And there's another thing that they may be receiving also, and that's for the medical exams.
Yes.
And what is that?
Before the break, we were talking about what the adjudicators do to develop the file and request records of treating sources. If an individual doesn't have treating sources, or if the evidence doesn't arrive, or if the evidence that does arrive doesn't provide enough overview of the claimant's impairments and functioning to allow a determination on disability to be made, then the individual will refer them out for what they call a consultative examination, which Pennsylvania has a sole source contract with Industrial Medical Associates, which is IMA. And they basically get the case on referral from us. They schedule, they do the exam, and they send us the report.
Okay. Steve, who are these adjudicators, examiners? What's their background?
An adjudicator is a Commonwealth employee that is hired off the Pennsylvania Civil Service Commission list through taking a test. In order to sit for the test, one has to have a college degree. The type of degree doesn't matter as long as they have a college degree. And once they take the test and get a score, then they're on the list and they're eligible for us to hire.
Okay. And they don't have a medical background?
They do not have a medical degree. I mean, some of them may have some college undergraduate medical training, but not a MD or PhD or advanced medical degree, no.
And yet they can make decisions. Are they required to consult with physicians? Yes,
they do consult on the cases with either a medical consultant or a psychological consultant. And in fact, as of this upcoming Wednesday, they have to consult in every single case with a medical or psychological consultant. For the last several years, since 1997, Pennsylvania was part of a prototype that allowed the adjudicators to actually make the medical determination in very few but certain types of cases. And that ends as of Wednesday. So every case will be reviewed by a...
So every case goes to a physician.
Or a psychologist, correct.
Yes. And then based on what do they make their decision? I say the adjudicator making the decision, and they make the ultimate decision on the medical side.
Well, no, the doctors will. They make the determination on the residual functional capacity, and then the adjudicator determines if there are jobs that are available within that RFC.
Okay. And they also have to take in consideration the independent medical exams that are ordered. Okay. Now, many times I have clients who've come into me and say, the doctor did a great job. He or she spent an hour with me and really evaluated me thoroughly, and you figure you're going to get a decent report. May not agree with it totally, but it's one that's going to be pretty decent. Other times I've had people come in and say, the doctor spent 15 minutes with me. How can they even figure out what's going on with me when I have my own family doctors and my orthopedic psychiatrist, whatever, handling things? How do you handle those reports when they come in?
Yeah, well, it's important to understand that not every case will be sent for a consultative examination. Generally, we're going to get them if the evidence is insufficient to make a determination. If the record is developed, then the medical staff and the adjudicator are able to make the decision based on that. But when the consultative evaluation comes in, it becomes one more piece of evidence. And so it's put into the hopper with all the records from the treating sources in hospitals, and then the doctors, for us, or the psychologists, look at the whole file. And sometimes what they see from that one-time examination fits what they see in the treatment records, sometimes it doesn't. And so the ultimate authority, it lies with the medical consultant or psychological consultant to determine disability based on what they see. And they may agree with what's in the consultative exam, they may disagree.
Okay, so that's just one little chip of information that goes in there.
Correct. Yeah, and it may be a large chip. If we have a case where there's no treatment at all, that may be all we have.
Okay.
But generally, there's at least some evidence, and the issue becomes it's just not sufficient to allow us to determine the claimant's functioning and specific findings as to whether the disability requirements are met.
So I have this this image of someone sitting at a desk, and they have this information that's all in front of them. They say yes, no, yes. It's not that simple, is it?
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, maybe. I mean, they have to make the determination, but they have a lot of evidence in front of them usually. They can have literally thousands of pages of evidence in some cases.
And is there a back and forth question answer type of consulting with the doctors and
the adjudicators?
Yes.
Absolutely. They work as a team. The doctors are the medical and or psychological experts. The adjudicators are the policy experts. Again, they go through a nearly year-long training to learn the legal, medical, vocational framework of the program. And so, yes, they do share and
you're referring to the physicians now are going through training as well.
Well, they also go through I was referring to the adjudicator, but when we hire consultants, they go through, again, it's 6 months to a year of training.
For them as well.
For them as well, correct.
Okay. And it's not just send it out here, send it out there, but they actually sit down and do interact and talk about each case.
Yes. Well, I would like to think each case. Some may be pretty clear that they don't need to have an exchange beyond what they send each other in the file. But oftentimes, yes, they do have to talk about things such as whether the doctor thinks additional evidence is needed. They'll relate that to the adjudicator who will go and get it for them.
Now, I know there's been a lot of discussion about the volume of Social Security disability claims. Yeah. There are a lot of, and we've actually had information on this program about why that is happening with baby boomers, and there are myriad reasons, all of which was anticipated, but not necessarily dealt with. You must be getting a much higher volume of work at the Bureau.
Well, actually, this past year, David, the receipts were down, and that's nationwide. But up until that point, yes, it was a steady increase in the number of claims, significant increase in claims that were filed. I mean, it's not down hugely, but they actually didn't receive as many this year as Social Security thought they would.
Can you give us some numbers on how many cases are sent to your bureau?
Well, I can tell you we cleared about 128,000 initial determinations this past fiscal year. And did about 50,000 plus continuing disability reviews. So we pretty much are able to clear what they send us. Sometimes they send us a few more, sometimes a few less, but that gives you an idea of the volume that we see each year.
And you mentioned the continuing disability review, and so everyone understands what we're talking about is if a person qualifies for Social Security disability in one form or another, their case can be reviewed at some later date.
Yes.
In fact, especially depending on their age, someone who's younger generally will be reviewed after any specific period of time.
It varies on the impairments. Based on some impairments, they may be expected to prove, so they'll have a shorter diary and be reviewed earlier, and others may have longer diaries. So there's no exact date, but again, they usually are diaried for a review within 5 to 7 years.
Okay, and this is actually Social Security that's diarying it to send back to you.
Correct. They'll look at it based on what our findings are, and then when they feel it's time for a CDR, they send it back to us, just like they do with the initial cases.
Okay, and it goes through another review process.
Yes.
All right. And each case is signed to a separate adjudicator.
Correct.
So, how many adjudicators do you have?
It varies. We have about 700 employees in our bureau. Of that, about 300, and currently about 325 to 330 are adjudicators.
All right. But again, look at how many cases. You're still dealing with a new volume of 175,000 cases every year.
Yes. And again, our goal is to get out the determination to the public in as quickly as we can.
Okay.
We
And so time-wise, that's, again, one of the common questions that's asked of me is, okay, now I applied. When am I going to get my response?
Right.
And that's not an easy answer. I usually say to people, average maybe 4 months. And am I close?
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, there are many factors, David, that impact how long a case takes. How many treatment sources have to be contacted, whether the claimant cooperates with the adjudicator's request for information, whether or not a case is selected for quality assurance review. We have a very rigorous quality assurance, as does Social Security. Some impairments have to wait 3 months. After bypass surgery or certain strokes, you might have to wait 3 months to see how the claimant is. So a lot of factors can impact that, but 4 months is fair.
Okay. Steve, before we run out of time, I want to thank Steve Rollins for being here.
Yeah, sure.
It's I think, very helpful for all of us. Sure. What is it that I, as a claimant's attorney, or the claimant can do to make life easier for your bureau?
The easiest thing would be, or the first thing that would come to my mind would be to cooperate with the adjudicator. When the adjudicator contacts you for information, please try to provide it. Complete the forms that are sent out. Please exercise some patience, too. If you call back and the adjudicator is not available, they will get back in touch. It just may not be at that moment. They may be involved with another case. But to me, that's the most important. If you cooperate and you can help us develop the record, we'll be able to get the decision out as quickly as possible.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Steve Rollins. Thank you to the Pennsylvania Bureau of Disability Determinations for loaning Steve for the day. And thank you for viewing our program.
Thanks.